The underground bunker shook again as another explosion echoed from somewhere above. Commander Jake Harrison gripped the metal railing and watched the red warning lights flash across the command center. His team of 23 people worked at their stations, trying to keep Earth's last communication array running. Outside, the world was burning. The Krillian ships had appeared 3 weeks ago without warning, massive crystal structures that moved like liquid metal across the sky. They had destroyed every major city on 3 continents. Their weapons turned buildings into glass and people into ash. Earth's military had lasted exactly 4 days against them. Jake looked at the main screen showing satellite feeds from around the planet. Moscow was gone. Beijing was a crater. New York existed only as a memory. The aliens were not just conquering Earth, they were harvesting it. Their strange machines dug deep into the ground, pulling out minerals that humans had never seen before. Lieutenant Emma Rodriguez walked up to him, her uniform torn and dirty. She had been awake for 36 hours straight, just like everyone else in the bunker. "Sir, we have power for maybe 1 more transmission. After that, our fusion reactor will be completely empty." Jake nodded slowly. They had already sent dozens of messages into space hoping someone might hear them. Every frequency, every language they knew, every possible way to call for help. But space had remained silent. Earth was alone, dying slowly while crystal ships carved up their planet like a birthday cake. "What about the new translation protocol Dr. Martinez finished?" Jake asked. Emma's tired eyes brightened slightly. "He thinks it might work. The computer can now translate our message into 17 different alien language patterns based on the signals we picked up over the years." "But sir, we still don't know if anyone is listening." Jake walked over to the communication station where Dr. Luis Martinez sat surrounded by cables and computer screens. The old scientist had worked for 40 years studying radio signals from space. Most people had thought he was wasting his time. Now he might be humanity's last hope. "Doctor, how certain are you about this translation system?" Dr. Martinez looked up with red, exhausted eyes. "Commander, I have been listening to space radio for most of my life. The patterns I found suggest at least 12 different civilizations communicate using similar mathematical structures. If we send our message using these patterns, someone should be able to understand us. And what exactly are we telling them? The truth, that we are under attack by hostile aliens, that we need military help immediately, that we offer alliance and friendship to anyone who can save us." Jake thought about this carefully. Alliance meant working together, being partners. But Earth had nothing to offer advanced aliens except maybe their planet's location. Still, desperate times required desperate choices. Sergeant Maya Patel called from her station near the door. "Sir, motion sensors show more Krillian ground units moving toward our position. We have maybe 6 hours before they find us." Jake made his decision. "Send the message, Doctor. All frequencies, all translation patterns. Tell whoever is listening that Earth needs allies against the Krillians." Dr. Martinez's fingers moved quickly across his keyboard. "Message prepared, sir." "This will use every bit of power we have left. Do it." The transmission array above ground came to life one final time. Earth's desperate message shot out into space at the speed of light, carrying humanity's final hope to the stars. The message was simple but clear. "This is Earth. We are under attack by superior alien forces called Krillians. We request immediate military assistance. We offer full alliance to any civilization that can help us survive this invasion." For 3 days, nothing happened. The Krillian ships continued their work, stripping metals from Earth's crust while their ground forces hunted down the last human settlements. Jake's team lived on emergency rations and waited for the power to run out completely. Then Lieutenant Rodriguez screamed, "Sir, contact, something big just appeared in orbit." Jake ran to her station and looked at the radar screen. A massive object had suddenly materialized above Earth's atmosphere. The sensor readings made no sense. The ship was larger than anything humans had ever built, covered in what looked like battle scars and weapon ports. "One ship?" Jake asked. "No, sir, more contacts appearing. Many more." The radar screen lit up like a Christmas tree as ship after ship decloaked in Earth's orbit. Jake counted 50 vessels, then 100, then stopped counting. Each ship was different, built by different species using different technology, but they all had one thing in common. They were clearly warships. Emma stared at the readings. "Sir, these ships are not Krillian. The hull materials, the energy signatures, everything is different. Are they talking to us?" "Negative, but they are scanning the planet extensively." "Wait, sir, I'm detecting movement." Landing craft are launching from several ships. Jake watched the tactical display as dozens of smaller vessels dropped toward Earth's surface. But they were not heading toward human settlements or the underground bunkers where survivors hid. Instead, every single landing craft was flying directly toward areas controlled by Krillian forces. "My God," whispered Dr. Martinez. "They're not here to invade us. They're here to fight the Krillians." As if to confirm his words, the first explosions lit up the sky over what used to be London. The Krillian ships that had been peacefully mining resources suddenly found themselves under attack by weapons that made their crystal technology look like toys from children. Jake grabbed the communication microphone with shaking hands. "Unknown vessels, this is Commander Harrison of Earth Defense. Please respond." The reply came immediately in perfect English. "Commander Harrison, this is Captain Thorne of the Galactic Deathworld Alliance fleet. We received your call for military alliance and have jumped to your location to provide assistance. What is your current tactical situation regarding the Krillian invasion force?" Alliance. The word hit Jake like a physical blow. These aliens thought Earth had requested to join some kind of military partnership, not just begged for rescue like children. Jake looked around the bunker at his exhausted team, then at the displays showing alien warships systematically destroying Krillian positions with devastating efficiency. Whatever these newcomers believed about Earth's capabilities, they were winning the fight that humanity had already lost. "Captain Thorne," Jake replied carefully, trying to keep his voice steady. "Earth is prepared to honor our commitment to this alliance. We have detailed intelligence on Krillian positions and tactics that might assist your operations." There was a brief pause. Then Captain Thorne's voice returned, and Jake could hear what sounded like approval. "Excellent, Commander. We look forward to working with Earth forces. The Deathworld Alliance has dealt with Krillian expansion before, but local knowledge always improves our effectiveness." As Jake ended the transmission, he realized that humanity had just committed to something they did not understand at all. But whatever a Deathworld Alliance was, it had to be better than extinction. Outside, the sounds of battle grew louder as Earth's new allies began their work. Captain Thorne stood on the bridge of the battleship Hammer of Justice and studied the tactical displays showing Earth's surface. The planet looked exactly like intelligence reports had described: a standard garden world with blue oceans, green continents, and the kind of pleasant atmosphere that most species could only dream of visiting. What made no sense was how the inhabitants had survived 3 weeks against a full Krillian harvesting operation. "Status report." Thorne ordered her communications officer, a tall reptilian Vrakari named Hiss, "Captain. We have eliminated 60% of Krillian ground positions. Their crystal ships are withdrawing to high orbit, but they have not jumped to hyperspace. They appear to be regrouping for a counterattack." Thorne nodded. The Krillians always followed the same pattern when facing Deathworld Alliance forces. First shock, then retreat, then massive reinforcement. This battle was far from over. "What about the locals? Have we established proper communication with Earth Military Command?" "Yes, Captain. Their commander Harrison has been providing tactical intelligence that is surprisingly accurate. His people seem to understand Krillian behavior patterns very well." This made Thorne frown. Most Garden World species ran screaming when they first encountered Krillian technology. The crystal aliens were designed to inspire terror in peaceful civilizations. But these Earthers not only fought back, they had studied their enemies and learned their weaknesses. Commander Brutus, the massive rock-skinned Goliathan who served as her ground operations chief, approached her station. His species came from a world where the mountains moved and the air could kill unprotected organisms in minutes. Even by Deathworld Alliance standards, Goliathans were considered tough. "Captain, I have finished reviewing Earth's military reports." "These numbers cannot be correct. What do you mean?" "According to their data, Earth's population organized armed resistance within hours of the initial Krillian landing. Not just military forces, but civilians, farmers, teachers, even children. They turned their entire planet into a battlefield." Thorne studied the reports on her screen. Most species had 2 types of individuals: warriors who fought and civilians who hid until the fighting ended. Professional military forces handled conflicts while non-combatants evacuated to safe areas. It was how civilized warfare worked throughout the galaxy. But Earth's reports showed something different. Ordinary humans had built explosive devices from farming chemicals. Teachers had organized sniper teams using hunting weapons. Children had served as communication runners between resistance cells. An entire species had become soldiers overnight. "Captain," Hiss called from his station. "We are receiving a transmission from Earth Command. Commander Harrison wants to coordinate a joint operation. Put him through." The main screen showed a tired-looking human male with short gray hair and intelligent eyes. Behind him, Thorne could see other humans working at primitive computer terminals. Their technology looked at least 2 centuries behind Galactic standards, but they used it with impressive efficiency. "Captain Thorne, we have identified a critical Krillian position that your forces might want to prioritize. They have established a command center in what used to be our city of Berlin. If you can disable their communication array, it will disrupt crystal ship coordination across this entire continent." Thorne studied the tactical data Harrison transmitted. His analysis was detailed and accurate, showing Krillian weak points that her own scouts had missed. "Commander, how did your people identify these vulnerabilities?" Harrison smiled grimly. "We've been fighting each other for thousands of years, Captain. When the Krillians invaded, we applied everything we learned from human warfare to their tactics. Turns out aliens make many of the same mistakes we do. Your species fights among itself? We used to. Wars, conflicts, territorial disputes. We got very good at finding ways to defeat superior technology using inferior resources. When crystal ships started blasting our cities, we just treated them like any other enemy force." Commander Brutus leaned closer to the screen. In his deep, rumbling voice, he asked, "You turned your planet's infrastructure into weapons?" "When necessary. We flooded underground tunnels to stop their mining machines. We collapsed buildings on their ground forces. We even figured out how to overload their crystal technology using electromagnetic pulses from our power stations." The bridge fell silent. Weaponizing civilian infrastructure was something that had never occurred to most military minds. Professional armies fought with military equipment in designated battle zones. The idea of turning an entire world into a trap was both brilliant and terrifying. "Commander Harrison," Thorne said slowly, "would you be willing to send some of your tactical specialists to work directly with our ground teams?" "Already prepared, Captain. We have 50 volunteers ready for immediate deployment." Within 6 hours, human specialists were embedded with Deathworld Alliance units across 3 continents. What happened next changed everything. Sergeant Maya Patel crouched beside a Goliathan assault team preparing to attack a Krillian crystal farm. The aliens were using massive machines to extract rare minerals from Earth's crust, defended by automated Guardian units that could slice through tank armor. "The Guardians have a blind spot," Maya explained to the Goliathan squad leader, a warrior named Stonecrusher. "They scan for metallic threats, but they ignore organic movement. If we approach from the northwest using natural cover, we can get within 50 meters before they detect us." Stonecrusher looked at the terrain through his combat visor. "Human Maya, this approach requires moving through a chemical waste area that would kill most species. Not us. Humans can hold our breath for several minutes, and our skin resists chemical burns better than most aliens expect. My people evolved on a world with dangerous environments." For the first time in his 20-year military career, Stonecrusher found himself learning new tactics from a Garden World native. These humans were not soft civilians after all. They were something much more interesting. The attack succeeded perfectly. Maya's approach allowed the Goliathan team to destroy the crystal farm without losing a single warrior. Similar successes were being reported across all combat zones where humans provided tactical support. But the real surprise came when long-range sensors detected new contacts jumping into the system. "Captain," Hiss reported with obvious concern, "massive Krillian reinforcement fleet approaching. Over 600 vessels, including 3 Worldbreaker-class ships." Thorne felt ice in her stomach. 600 ships was more than the entire Deathworld Alliance fleet could handle, even with Earth's tactical support. "Open a channel to Commander Harrison." The human appeared on screen, but instead of fear, his expression showed grim determination. "We detected them too, Captain. Looks like the Krillians are taking this personally. Commander, I must advise you that our combined forces cannot defeat a fleet of that size. I recommend evacuating as many of your people as possible." Harrison shook his head. "Captain, with respect, you're thinking like a traditional military force. But this isn't a traditional battle. Earth has been preparing for this moment since the first Krillian ship arrived." "What do you mean?" "We've been studying their technology, their tactics, their weaknesses, and we've prepared some surprises that work better with a large enemy fleet than a small one." Harrison's smile was predatory. "Captain, trust us. We know how to fight when we're outnumbered." As the Krillian reinforcement fleet approached Earth's orbital space, Thorn realized that humanity was about to teach the Deathworld Alliance something new about warfare. The question was whether they would all survive the lesson. Admiral Crick stood on the command bridge of the Krillian flagship Eternal Crystal and watched Earth grow larger on the main display. His crystal body hummed with anger as he reviewed the battle reports. A mere Deathworld Alliance fleet had dared to interfere with Imperial harvesting operations, and worse, they had somehow convinced the local primitives to resist instead of surrendering peacefully. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "our advance forces have been completely driven from the planet's surface. The Alliance fleet maintains orbital position and shows no signs of retreating." Crix's crystalline features shifted into what other species might recognize as a cruel smile. "Of course they do not retreat. Deathworlders never learned proper fear. They will stand and fight even when facing impossible odds." The Krillian Empire had dealt with the Alliance before. Their warriors were strong, brave, and utterly predictable. They would form battle lines, charge forward with weapons blazing, and die gloriously while inflicting maximum damage. It was how Deathworld species always fought, and it was why the Empire usually avoided their territory. But Earth was different. The mineral deposits here were worth an entire fleet, and the local species showed unusual potential as slave workers. They adapted quickly, learned fast, and seemed to thrive under pressure. Such qualities were valuable enough to justify the cost of destroying an Alliance intervention force. "All ships prepare for standard engagement protocol," Crix ordered. "We will crush their fleet, harvest this planet, and add another victory to Imperial records." On Earth's surface, Jake Harrison stood in the rebuilt command center and watched 600 enemy ships approaching through telescopic displays. The Alliance fleet looked tiny in comparison, barely 200 vessels against overwhelming numbers. By every military calculation he had ever learned, this battle was already lost. But Jake was not thinking like a traditional military commander anymore. 3 weeks of fighting impossible odds had taught him to see warfare differently. "Dr. Martinez, are the orbital relay stations ready?" The elderly scientist nodded from his position at a complex control panel. "All 17 stations are active and synchronized, Commander. The network can handle the data load. But I must warn you that using this much power simultaneously might damage our planetary grid permanently." "Better than being dead. Maya, status on ground teams?" Sergeant Patel's voice came through the communication system from her position with a Goliathan strike force in the ruins of Tokyo. "All human advisors are in position with Alliance units, sir. They understand the tactical plan, though I think some of them still believe we're crazy." Jake almost laughed. The plan was crazy, which was exactly why it might work. For 3 weeks, human tactical specialists had been studying how Krillian technology functioned. What they discovered was that crystal-based systems, while incredibly powerful, had specific vulnerabilities that could be exploited by species willing to think creatively. "Captain Thorn, your fleet is in position?" Thorn's voice carried obvious tension. "Commander, I must state again that this strategy violates every principle of space combat. We are deliberately placing our ships in vulnerable positions. Trust us, Captain. We've done this before, just never in space." The truth was that humans had never attempted anything like this in space, but they had used similar tactics countless times throughout their history. When facing superior enemy forces, the key was not to fight stronger, but to fight smarter. The Krillian fleet entered weapons range and immediately formed their traditional battle formation, a crystal wall of ships designed to maximize firepower, while protecting their command vessels. It was a formation that had conquered hundreds of worlds and destroyed dozens of enemy fleets. Admiral Crix watched with satisfaction as the Alliance ships moved to meet his fleet head-on. Predictable as always. Begin the attack. Thousands of crystal weapons fired simultaneously, filling space with deadly energy beams that could slice through ship armor like paper. The Alliance fleet responded with their own weapons, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. What Crix did not notice was that the Alliance ships were moving in a very specific pattern, one designed by human tactical specialists who understood something about warfare that most aliens had never considered. "Now," Jake shouted into his communicator. Across Earth's surface, 17 hidden relay stations activated simultaneously. Each station was built from salvaged Krillian technology combined with human engineering, creating hybrid systems that the aliens had never seen before. The stations began broadcasting on frequencies that resonated directly with crystal-based technology. The effect was immediate and devastating. Every Krillian ship in the fleet suddenly found their crystal matrices vibrating at dangerous frequencies. Weapon systems began to overload. Navigation computers crashed. Communication arrays shattered as harmonic vibrations turned their own technology against them. "What is happening?" Admiral Crix demanded as his flagship shuddered around him. "Sir, our crystal systems are experiencing resonance cascade failure. Something is broadcasting harmonic interference patterns that our technology cannot filter." On the Alliance fleet, Captain Thorne watched in amazement as the enormous Krillian formation began to collapse. Ships that had been perfectly coordinated moments before were now flying blind, their crews struggling to regain control of vessels that no longer responded properly to commands. "All Alliance ships, execute harassment protocol," Thorne ordered. "Focus on disabled vessels and avoid any ship that still has functioning weapons." The Alliance fleet, suddenly transformed from desperate defenders into predators, began systematically destroying helpless Krillian ships. But the real surprise came when human voices started appearing on Alliance communication channels. "Alliance vessel Thunderstrike, this is Maya Patel. Krillian cruiser at coordinates 12 Mark 7 has lost engine control but still has active weapons. Approach from below and target their crystal matrix array." "Alliance squadron leader Stonecrusher, this is human advisor Alex Chen. The Krillian formation is trying to regroup around their command ship. If you hit their communication relay now, you can prevent them from coordinating a defense." Across the battlefield, human observers embedded with Alliance forces provided real-time tactical intelligence that turned a chaotic melee into a precisely orchestrated destruction of the Krillian fleet. "Admiral," Crix realized with growing horror that his perfect battle formation had become a death trap. The primitive planet below had somehow weaponized his own technology against him, and the Alliance fleet was using tactical coordination beyond anything he had ever encountered. "All ships emergency retreat. Jump to hyperspace immediately." But it was too late. The harmonic interference had damaged too many ships too badly. Of the 600 vessels that had arrived to claim Earth, fewer than 200 retained enough functionality to escape. As the surviving Krillian ships limped away into hyperspace, Jake allowed himself to smile for the first time in weeks. Earth had not just survived, they had won. "Commander Harrison," Captain Thorne's voice came through the communication system. "I believe I owe you an apology. When we responded to your Alliance request, we assumed we would be protecting a typical garden world. We were not prepared for this level of tactical innovation." Jake looked around the command center at his exhausted but victorious team. "Captain, I think this alliance is going to work out very well for everyone involved." Outside, the stars looked different somehow. No longer distant and cold, but welcoming and full of possibility. Earth had found its place among the galactic community, not as victims to be protected, but as partners to be respected. The real adventure was just beginning. 2 months after the Battle of Earth, Jake Harrison stood on the observation deck of the Alliance cruiser Starfire and watched the blue-green planet of Kepler 442b rotate slowly below them. This was the 4th world they had liberated from Krillian occupation, and each operation had become easier as human tactical methods spread throughout the Alliance fleet. What had started as a desperate call for help had transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history, a true partnership between species that complemented each other perfectly. "Commander," came the voice of Lieutenant Torres, the human liaison officer who now coordinated between Earth forces and their alien allies. "Captain Thorne requests your presence in the strategic planning chamber. We have received intelligence about a major Krillian operation." Jake made his way through the ship's corridors, still amazed by how quickly humans had adapted to alien technology. The Deathworld Alliance had shared their medical knowledge, their engineering techniques, and their advanced weapons systems. In return, humans had revolutionized their military doctrine with tactical innovations that were spreading across the galaxy. The planning chamber contained representatives from all Alliance species. Captain Thorne stood beside a holographic display showing star charts, while Commander Brutus reviewed ground assault protocols on a secondary screen. The serpentine Vrikari intelligence specialist called Whisper sat coiled around a data analysis station, and several other alien officers studied various tactical reports. Jake, Captain Thorne said as he entered. "We have a problem. Krillian Empire forces have established a major staging area in the Vega system. Intelligence suggests they are preparing for a massive counteroffensive that could threaten dozens of Alliance worlds." The holographic display showed the Vega system in detail. 3 planets, multiple asteroid mining facilities, and what appeared to be a massive space station surrounded by hundreds of Krillian ships. "How massive?" Jake asked. Whisper's translated voice hissed through the chamber's speakers. "Preliminary estimates suggest over 2,000 vessels, including 12 Worldbreaker-class ships and support infrastructure for sustained military operations. This represents the largest Krillian fleet assembled in 50 years, Commander Brutus growled. His rocky features twisted in frustration. Traditional assault would require the entire Alliance fleet and would likely result in massive casualties. Even with human tactical support, the numbers are overwhelming. Jake studied the display carefully, his mind working through possibilities that his alien allies might not consider. Human military history was filled with examples of smaller forces defeating larger ones through unconventional tactics, but this situation required something beyond normal strategy. "What do we know about their command structure?" "Standard Krillian hierarchy," Whisper replied. "Supreme Admiral Zek's commands from the Central Space Station. All fleet operations are coordinated through crystal communication networks that link every ship to the command center. And if that command center were somehow disabled?" Captain Thorne frowned. "The fleet would lose coordination, but individual ships would still be dangerous. We lack the firepower to destroy 2,000 vessels even if they cannot work together effectively." Jake smiled, and the alien officers had learned to recognize that expression as a sign that humans were about to suggest something impossible. "Captain, what if we did not try to destroy the fleet at all? What if we convinced them to destroy themselves?" The planning session lasted 14 hours. When they finally reached agreement on the operation, even the experienced Deathworld Alliance commanders were shaking their heads in disbelief at the audacity of the human plan. 3 weeks later, a small Alliance task force approached the Vega system. 50 ships, including several vessels that had been deliberately damaged to look like refugees from recent battles. Leading the formation was Jake Harrison aboard a modified Earth cruiser that broadcast distress signals on all frequencies. Supreme Admiral Zex watched the approaching fleet from his command station and felt satisfaction flow through his crystal body. The Alliance had finally made a mistake, bringing their precious human advisors directly to him instead of hiding them safely behind defensive lines. "Admiral," his intelligence officer reported, "the task force appears to be fleeing from our recent offensive in the Centauri sector. They show battle damage and reduced operational capacity." "Perfect. Deploy interceptor squadrons to disable their ships. I want those humans captured alive for interrogation." As Krillian ships moved to surround the small Alliance force, Jake opened a communication channel to all vessels in his task force. "Remember, everyone. Look desperate but not helpless. We need them to think they are winning." The Alliance ships put up exactly the right amount of resistance. Enough to seem genuine, but not enough to actually threaten the vastly superior Krillian forces. Within hours, Jake's task force had been captured and brought aboard Krillian vessels for processing. What the Krillians did not realize was that every captured ship contained hidden human technical specialists who immediately began studying Krillian technology from the inside. Dr. Martinez, now serving as chief technical advisor to the Alliance fleet, had spent months developing new applications for the harmonic interference techniques that had proven so effective at Earth. But those early systems required massive ground-based transmitters. What they needed was a way to generate the same effect from inside Krillian ships themselves. "Jake," came Maya's voice through his concealed communicator. "We are in position aboard 7 different vessels. The Krillians have not detected our equipment modifications." Similar reports came from other teams. Human technicians, working with Alliance engineers, had managed to install harmonic resonance generators throughout the Krillian fleet without being detected. The generators were small, hidden within normal ship systems and designed to activate simultaneously on Jake's signal. But the real key to the plan was not technology. It was psychology. Admiral Zex personally interrogated Jake in the command center of his massive space station. The crystal alien's arrogant confidence was exactly what human intelligence had predicted. "So primitive, you thought to challenge the Krillian Empire with your pathetic Alliance fleet?" Jake smiled calmly. Admiral, we did not come here to challenge you. We came here to surrender. This was not the response Zex had expected. Surrender? The Alliance Council has concluded that continued resistance is futile. We are prepared to offer complete capitulation in exchange for the survival of our remaining populations. Jake transmitted a data package that appeared to contain detailed information about Alliance fleet positions, defensive installations, and strategic resources. To Krillian intelligence officers, it looked like a complete intelligence breakthrough. What the data package actually contained was a sophisticated computer virus designed by human programmers working with Vakari cyber warfare specialists. The virus was tailored specifically for crystal-based computer systems and would spread through the Krillian communication network like fire through dry grass. You will provide this information freely? Zex asked suspiciously. Admiral, humans are a practical species. When we cannot win, we negotiate. This data represents everything the Alliance knows about galactic military operations. Use it to end this war quickly and minimize further casualties. Zex connected the data package to his command network, and the virus immediately began spreading to every connected system throughout the Krillian fleet. At the same time, Jake activated his concealed communicator. All teams execute Phase 2. Across the Krillian fleet, hidden harmonic generators activated simultaneously. But instead of the broad-spectrum interference used at Earth, these devices generated very specific frequencies designed to interact with the computer virus now spreading through every ship's systems. The result was catastrophic system failure on a scale that Krillian engineers had never imagined. Possible ships lost navigation, weapons control, life support, and communication simultaneously. The massive space station began spinning out of control as its attitude thrusters fired randomly. In the confusion, automated defense systems began targeting other Krillian vessels as the virus corrupted their identification. Protocol's Admiral Zex watched in horror as his perfect fleet began destroying itself. What have you done? He demanded. Jake stood calmly as chaos erupted around them. Admiral, we taught your technology to think like humans. Unfortunately, your systems were not designed for that kind of stress. As Alliance rescue ships emerged from hyperspace to collect the captured task force, Jake reflected on how much the galaxy had changed in just a few months. Humanity had found their place among the stars not through conquest but through cooperation. They had proven that intelligence and creativity could triumph over raw power. The Krillian Empire would recover from this defeat eventually, but they would never again underestimate the species from the small blue planet that had turned the galaxy's most dangerous alliance into its most effective fighting force. 6 months after what galactic historians would later call the Vega incident, Admiral Jake Harrison stood on the bridge of the Alliance flagship Unity and watched the final Krillian stronghold burn in the distance. The fortress world of Crystalline Prime, which had served as the Empire's military headquarters for over 1,000 years, was finally falling to combined human-alien forces. But this was not just another victory. This was the end of the Krillian expansion that had terrorized peaceful species across the galaxy for centuries. And it had been accomplished not through superior firepower, but through the simple act of teaching the galaxy's most dangerous predators how to think like humans. Admiral, called Commander Torres from her station, ground forces report that Emperor Crix has requested negotiation terms. The Krillian High Command is ready to discuss full surrender. Jake nodded, still somewhat amazed by his new title. 6 months ago, he had been a desperate survivor hiding in an underground bunker. Now he commanded the most effective military force in known space. A combined fleet where human tactical innovation merged seamlessly with alien technological superiority. Captain Thorne approached him, her expression mixing respect with something that might have been amusement. Jake, the Alliance Council has reviewed your recommendation for post-war galactic reorganization. They want to implement the human concept of democratic cooperation throughout all member worlds. And the Krillians will be offered membership if they accept the new system. Your idea of turning former enemies into allies through shared governance rather than conquest has impressed even the most traditional council members. Jake looked out at the stars and remembered the desperate message Earth had sent into space. Just 6 months earlier, they had asked for help against impossible odds and received something far more valuable. The opportunity to change how an entire galaxy thought about warfare, cooperation, and survival. The transformation had not been easy. Teaching alien species to think tactically like humans required patience, creativity, and a willingness to challenge thousands of years of military tradition. But the results spoke for themselves. Where Alliance forces had once relied purely on overwhelming firepower and individual courage, they now used coordinated strategies that multiplied their effectiveness exponentially. Human advisors had introduced concepts like asymmetric warfare, psychological operations, and technological adaptation that allowed smaller forces to defeat much larger enemies. More importantly, humans had taught their allies that true strength came not from domination, but from cooperation between different species with complementary abilities. "Sir," called Sergeant Patel from the tactical station, "we are receiving a transmission from Earth. President Chen wants to speak with you personally." The main screen showed the familiar face of Dr. Elena Chen, the former xenobiologist who had become Earth's first planetary president after humanity joined the galactic community. Behind her, Jake could see the rebuilt command center that had once been their desperate last refuge. "Jake, congratulations on another impossible victory. The Council of Nations has voted unanimously to accept the Alliance proposal for establishing Earth as the new tactical training center for galactic defense forces." Jake smiled. The decision made perfect sense. Earth's unique history of constant warfare had produced a species exceptionally skilled at developing new combat strategies. Every major alien military now wanted human advisors, and demand for tactical training far exceeded supply. What about the cultural exchange programs? Proceeding ahead of schedule. We now have human students on 47 different worlds, learning alien sciences, technologies, and arts. In return, over 200 alien species have established research facilities on Earth. The knowledge transfer is benefiting everyone involved. This had been perhaps the most unexpected development. Humans had assumed they had little to offer advanced alien civilizations except military expertise. But they had discovered that their unique perspective, shaped by a planet where multiple intelligent species competed for resources, provided insights that other worlds had never developed. Human philosophers were revolutionizing galactic ethics by introducing concepts of individual rights and democratic governance. Human artists were creating new forms of expression that combined alien technologies with human creativity. Human scientists were making breakthrough discoveries by approaching problems from directions that alien minds had never considered. "Jake," President Chen continued, "there is one more thing. The Krillian Emperor has formally requested that human negotiators handle their integration into the Alliance. Apparently, they believe our species understands the transition from conquest-based society to cooperation-based civilization better than anyone else." Jake considered this carefully. Humanity had indeed made that transition, transforming from a species that constantly fought itself into one that sought peaceful cooperation with others. If humans could learn to work together despite their differences, perhaps they could teach the same lessons to former enemies. "Tell Emperor Krix that Earth accepts his request. We will help the Krillian people find their place in the new galactic order." As the transmission ended, Jake reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this point. Earth's desperate SOS had been answered by aliens who mistook their cry for help as a call for military alliance. That misunderstanding had created the most successful partnership in galactic history. Commander Brutus approached the bridge, his massive stone-like frame moving with surprising grace. "Admiral Harrison, the final Krillian surrender ceremony is prepared. Are you ready to witness the end of the Empire?" "More than ready, old friend." They watched together as Krillian ships across the system powered down their weapons and activated surrender beacons. Thousand-year-old symbols of conquest and domination were being replaced by flags of cooperation and mutual respect. But Jake's thoughts were already moving beyond this victory. The galaxy was changing rapidly as human ideas spread throughout the Alliance. Democratic governments were replacing authoritarian regimes. Cooperative research was solving problems that had puzzled scientists for centuries. Former enemies were becoming partners in exploration and discovery. Most importantly, the concept of species working together as equals was taking root across hundreds of worlds. The idea that diversity was strength rather than weakness was revolutionizing how galactic civilization functioned. "Sir," called Torres, "long-range sensors are detecting something interesting. A series of distress signals from the Andromeda sector. Unknown alien species requesting assistance against some kind of mechanical invasion force. Jake felt a familiar excitement. Another species in trouble, another opportunity to help, another chance to expand the growing alliance of civilizations committed to cooperation over conquest. Set course for Andromeda, Commander. Let's go see who needs our help. As the Alliance fleet jumped into hyperspace, Jake smiled at the irony. Humanity had started this journey by sending a desperate call for allies into the void. Now they were the ones answering such calls, bringing hope to species that faced impossible odds. The galaxy was vast, full of wonders and dangers that no single species could handle alone. But together, working as partners rather than competitors, there was no challenge they could not overcome. Earth's children were no longer asking for help. They were providing it, carrying the lessons learned in their darkest hour to every corner of the galaxy. The small blue planet that had once faced extinction, alone had become the heart of an alliance, dedicated to ensuring that no world would ever have to face such darkness without friends. The future was bright with infinite possibilities, and humanity would help write every chapter of the story to come, not as conquerors but as teachers, partners, and friends to anyone willing to learn that true strength came from standing together rather than standing alone. In the distance, new stars beckoned with the promise of new adventures, new allies, and new opportunities to prove that the greatest weapon in the universe was not superior technology or overwhelming force, but the simple willingness to help others in their time of need. The Alliance fleet raced toward Andromeda, carrying hope to unknown species facing their own impossible odds. And somewhere in the vast cosmos, other desperate voices would soon discover that they were not alone, that help was coming, and that the galaxy had become a place where cooperation triumphed over conquest. The age of isolation was ending. The age of alliance had begun. The crystal towers of Velthara Prime shined like glass against the dying light of two suns. High Counselor Thys put her long fingers against the clear wall, watching their last space defenses break apart under attack from the Ravager enemy ships. "How long before our planet shields stop working?" she asked quietly while chaos filled the room around them. "Technical helper." Quinn looked at his glowing screens with 4 eyes moving fast. 18 days, maybe 20 if we take power from the farms. Thys shut her eyes. The Veltharian people had ruled this peaceful part of space for 3,000 years. Their world was built on peace, art, and learning. They never needed weapons. They never thought something like the Ravagers could exist in the dark places of space. "What about the Coalition?" she asked, but already knew what Quinn would say. No answer. "Every member world has either died or hidden behind their own shields," Quinn said, his tentacles drooping sadly. "We are alone." The floor shook as another space station died in bright fire. Through the clear wall, Thys could see the Ravager ships. They looked like twisted mixtures of stolen technology and living flesh that broke every rule of good design her people believed in. "There is one choice," Quinn said carefully. "Our deep space watchers found strange energy signals from the outer edge territories. Unknown ships, but their technology looks strong." Thys turned to look at him. "The forbidden areas? The quarantine zones?" "Yes. The places marked as danger hostile species in the galaxy survey records. For many generations, the civilized galaxy had kept strict boundaries around certain star systems. The species inside were thought to be too aggressive, too dangerous for contact. Better to leave them alone than risk bringing violence to peaceful worlds. What do we know about them?" Quinn changed his display, showing broken pieces of information. "Scattered reports from spy drones mostly. They can survive high radiation, extreme hot and cold, and—" He stopped. Proof of constant fighting among themselves. Another platform exploded above them, its broken pieces hitting their shields. Thys made her choice. Write an emergency message. Use all frequencies, maximum power. Send it toward those outer edge signals. "High Counselor, if we break the quarantine rules, the rules mean nothing if we are all dead. Send the message, within 1 hour." Every working transmitter on Velthara Prime focused its power into one desperate cry for help that raced across empty space toward the unknown systems beyond the galaxy's edge. The message was simple. "To anyone who gets this, we are under attack by enemy forces. Our civilization will die. We offer technology exchange, resource rights, land agreements, anything for military help. Please answer. Time is running out." As the signal disappeared into the dark between stars, neither Thys nor Quinn could imagine that it would reach a species that had made warfare into an art form. a species whose homeworld was so dangerous that they thought most of the galaxy's challenges were easy vacation spots. They had called the humans, and the humans were coming. The Ravager horde had been a terror in this part of space for decades. They moved like a disease from world to world, consuming everything living and turning it into more of themselves. Their ships were grown rather than built, mixing stolen technology with living tissue in ways that made civilized engineers sick to look at. The Ravagers had once been the Keth Mori Empire, before a biological weapon changed them into something hungry and mindless. Now they existed only to eat and grow, spreading across the galaxy like a cancer that could not be stopped. This remembered the first reports from the outer colonies. Entire worlds going silent. Rescue ships finding nothing but empty husks of planets stripped of all life. The Coalition had tried to fight, but their peaceful nature made them weak against an enemy that felt no fear and showed no mercy. "High Counselor," Communications Officer Vex called out. "The message has been sent on all channels." "How long until it reaches the outer territories?" Theiss asked. "With our most powerful transmitters, approximately 47 hours for the signal to reach the nearest quarantine zone." Theiss nodded, knowing they might not have 47 hours. The Ravager fleet was massive, thousands of bioships that moved like a swarm of insects. Their own defenses were strong but not built for this kind of sustained attack. "What do we do now?" asked Defense Minister Crix, his scaled hide showing stress patterns. "We wait," Theiss said, "and we hope that whoever lives in those forbidden zones is more interested in helping than conquering." The irony was not lost on her. For centuries, the Coalition had kept those sectors quarantined because the species inside were deemed too violent and dangerous. Now they were hoping that same violence might save them. Through the observation deck windows, explosions lit up the night sky as another defense platform died. The Ravager ships moved closer to the planet with each passing hour. Their biomechanical forms pulsed with stolen energy, and their weapon systems charged with power taken from 100 dead worlds. Quinn worked frantically at his station, trying to squeeze more time from their failing defenses. "I can reroute power from the entertainment districts," he said. "That might give us 6 more hours." "Do it," Theiss ordered. She looked out at the enemy fleet and wondered what kind of beings they had just contacted. The quarantine zones had been established after the first survey missions reported species with disturbing levels of aggression and technological focus on warfare. The few reports that came back spoke of worlds where conflict was constant, and survival required constant adaptation. One report she remembered mentioned a species that had survived an ice age, multiple mass extinctions and global wars while still developing faster than light travel. Their homeworld was described as a Class 12 death world, with extreme weather, dangerous wildlife, and radiation levels that would kill most known species. The surveyor had recommended immediate quarantine with the note, "These beings appear to view extreme danger as normal living conditions. Contact not recommended under any circumstances." Now Theiss was hoping those same dangerous beings would answer their call for help. "Signal status?" she asked. "Still transmitting, High Counselor." No response yet. The waiting was the hardest part. Every minute brought the Ravagers closer to breaking through their shields. Every hour made rescue less likely. But what choice did they have? The Coalition had abandoned them. Their own military was designed for peacekeeping, not warfare against an enemy that showed no mercy. As the first of Velthera Prime's 3 moons rose above the horizon, this made a silent prayer to whatever gods might be listening. She prayed that someone in the dark between stars would hear their cry for help. She prayed that the quarantine zones held beings capable of fighting monsters. Most of all, she prayed that calling for help from the forbidden sectors would not simply trade one destroyer for another. The signal continued its journey through space, carrying the desperate hope of an entire civilization toward the unknown. Regions where humanity had been quietly building the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. And in 46 hours and 17 minutes, they would get their answer. Admiral Marcus Reeves stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, watching the alien message play for the 3rd time. The holographic display showed a tall, thin being with pale blue skin and clear terror in its large eyes. "Analysis complete, Admiral," reported Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. The signal came from coordinates about 4,000 light-years in the spinward direction. The language patterns suggest a highly advanced but peaceful civilization. Reeves nodded grimly. In the 200 years since humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel, they had met exactly 17 other space-traveling species. 14 had immediately started wars when they first met humans. 2 had tried to make humans into slaves after mistaking their peaceful attempts at diplomacy for weakness. 1 had simply disappeared after a brief exchange of polite conversation. "What do we know about their attackers?" he asked. Intelligence Officer Kane brought up another display. Cross-referencing with our long-range sensor data, we have identified a massive fleet moving through that sector. Biomechanical signatures, no standard design patterns. Appears to be some form of collective or hive mind organization. How many ships? Conservative estimate? 3,000 vessels of various sizes. Admiral, this is not a raid or territorial dispute. This is complete extermination. Reeves studied the tactical display. According to all military rules, this was not humanity's fight. The aliens asking for help were strangers from a distant sector. Earth's defense requirements meant the fleet's main job was protecting human colonies. But something about the aliens' message, the raw desperation, the willingness to offer anything for help, reminded him of humanity's own dark periods. The times when they had stood alone against overwhelming odds and had to fight or die. "Recommendations?" he asked his staff. Commander Walsh spoke first. "Admiral, our current battle group includes 12 dreadnoughts, 38 cruisers, and 54 destroyers. We are built for war, but this would mean fighting an unknown enemy with unknown capabilities. On the other hand," Kane added, "first contact with a peaceful species could establish humanity as a galactic power worth respecting, rather than conquering." Reeves turned to his tactical officer. "Carter, honest assessment. Can we win?" Carter's smile was like a predator showing teeth. "Sir, these aliens chose to attack the wrong species' potential allies. Our weapons are designed to function in Earth's radiation fields. Our ships are built to survive asteroid impacts and solar flares. Our Marines train in gravity that would crush most living things." The Admiral made his decision. "Signal the fleet. We are changing course for Velthara Prime. Lieutenant Torres, send a response to our new friends." "What should the message say, sir?" Reeves looked out at the stars where his battle-hardened fleet was already beginning to turn toward the distant crisis. "Tell them that help is coming. Tell them to hold on for 72 hours. And if they ask who we are?" The Admiral's face was grim but determined. "Tell them we are humans, and that we specialize in impossible situations." Captain Lisa Monroe stood in the briefing room of the UES Devastator, addressing her Marine battalion. The holographic display showed intelligence data about their upcoming mission. "Listen up, Marines," she said. "We are about to make first contact with a peaceful alien species that is being exterminated by hostiles. This is not a drill. This is not a simulation. This is real combat against an unknown enemy." Sergeant Rodriguez raised his hand. "Ma'am, what do we know about the enemy capabilities? Biomechanical ships, hive mind organization, and they have been winning against a technologically advanced civilization. That suggests either superior numbers, superior technology, or complete lack of concern for casualties." "Rules of engagement?" asked Corporal Kim. "The aliens we are helping are civilians. The ones attacking them are hostiles. Use your judgment, but remember, we are representing humanity's first impression to a galactic community." The Marines looked at each other with expressions that mixed excitement and concern. First contact situations were always dangerous, but first contact during active combat was unprecedented. "Ma'am," Rodriguez asked, "what if the aliens we are helping decide they do not like us either?" Monroe's smile was cold. "Then we will deal with that problem when it comes. Right now, our job is to save a civilization from extinction. Questions about politics can wait until after we win." In the engineering sections of the human fleet, Chief Engineer Thompson ran final checks on the weapon systems. Human military technology had been developed through constant warfare on a world that tried to kill everything living on it. Their weapons were designed to function in environments that would destroy most civilized technology. "Kinetic accelerators at full power," reported his assistant. "Fusion warheads armed and ready. Point defense systems online." Thompson nodded with satisfaction. The aliens they were going to fight had probably never encountered weapons like these. Most civilized species used energy weapons, elegant, efficient, and precise. Humans use kinetic weapons, brutal, devastating, and nearly impossible to defend against. "What about the radiation shielding?" he asked. "Triple redundancy on all systems." These ships could fly through a solar flare and keep fighting. That was the key advantage humanity had discovered in their brief experience with galactic warfare. Most alien species evolved on worlds with stable climates and gentle radiation levels. Their technology reflected this peaceful evolution, sophisticated but fragile. Human technology was designed for a world where the weather could kill you, the radiation could cook you, and the wildlife considered humans to be convenient snacks. It was crude by galactic standards, but it was nearly indestructible. As the human fleet prepared for combat, the message response raced through space toward Velthera Prime. It was a simple message, but it carried the promise of salvation from a species that had turned warfare into a survival skill. Admiral Reeves stood alone in his ready room, looking at intelligence reports about the sector they were approaching. The Ravager horde had consumed dozens of worlds, leaving nothing but empty husks behind. The peaceful coalition species had been unable to stop them, despite centuries of trying. He thought about Earth's history, the constant wars, the environmental disasters, the near extinctions that had forged humanity into something harder and more adaptable than most species. Every challenge had made them stronger, more innovative, more willing to do whatever was necessary to survive. Now those same qualities that made other species fear humans might be exactly what was needed to save a civilization. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, racing toward a battle that would either announce humanity's arrival as the galaxy's newest saviors or its newest conquerors. Either way, the galaxy was about to learn that there were worse things in the dark between stars than the Ravager horde. There were humans. And humans were very good at war. The Ravager horde had been grinding against Velthera Prime's shields for 36 standard days, when the impossible happened. Long-range sensors detected massive hyperspace distortions at the system's edge, distortions that resolved into a fleet unlike anything in the galactic databases. High Counselor, this rushed to the command center, where Technical Advisor Quinn was frantically analyzing the incoming vessels. Unknown configuration, unknown materials, he reported, his voice tight with confusion. The energy signatures are chaotic. These ships appear to be designed for extreme environments. On the main display, the alien fleet took formation with military precision that spoke of countless battles. The vessels themselves were brutal in their efficiency. No elegant curves or artistic flourishes, just angular armor and weapon arrays that seemed designed for one purpose only. Are they responding to our distress call? Theiss asked. Signal incoming, Communications Officer Vex announced. The display shimmered, revealing a being that made Theiss step backward instinctively. The creature before them was clearly a predator, forward-facing eyes, prominent teeth, and an expression of controlled aggression that radiated barely contained violence. Its skin was darker than space, and its uniform bore symbols that suggested military rank. This is Admiral Marcus Reeves of the United Earth Space Command, the being said in perfectly translated galactic standard. We received your distress call. We are here to help. Before Theiss could respond, proximity alerts screamed throughout the command center. The Ravager fleet had detected the newcomers and was moving to intercept. Admiral Reeves, Theiss managed. You do not understand the danger. The Ravagers have over 3,000 vessels. Your fleet is outnumbered 3-1, Reeves interrupted with what might have been a smile. We have faced worse odds. Recommend you maintain planetary shields and stay clear of the engagement zone. The human fleet moved forward with terrifying purpose. Theiss watched in horror as the smaller human force charged directly toward the massive Ravager armada. They are going to be slaughtered, Quinn whispered. Then the humans opened fire. The weapons were like nothing the Veltharians had ever seen. Instead of the elegant energy beams favored by civilized species, the human ships launched solid projectiles at significant fractions of light speed, accompanied by directed fusion explosions and something their sensors could not even identify. The first line of Ravager ships simply ceased to exist. Impossible, Vex breathed. Those projectiles are moving at 0.7 light speed. The energy requirements alone, they are using kinetic weapons, Quinn realized. Primitive, brutal kinetic weapons accelerated to relativistic speeds. But there was nothing primitive about the human tactics. They moved like a pack of predators, coordinating strikes with lethal precision. When Ravager bioships attempted to board human vessels, the aliens discovered that the humans had prepared for that too. Their Ship's corridors became death traps filled with atmospheric toxins and gravity fluctuations. Captain Monroe led her Marines through the corridors of the UES Devastator as Ravager boarding pods clamped onto the hull. The biomechanical invaders that poured through the breaches were unlike anything in human experience. Part machine, part living tissue driven by hunger that seemed to override all other instincts. Contact front, Sergeant Rodriguez called out as the first Ravagers rounded the corner. The Marines opened fire with weapons that had been designed to function in Earth's hostile environment. Hypervelocity rounds tore through biomechanical armor that had been grown rather than manufactured. Plasma bursts cooked organic components that were not designed to handle such extreme temperatures. "They keep coming," Corporal Kim shouted. Monroe adjusted her tactical display. "Fall back to position 3. Let them enter the kill zone." The Ravagers followed, driven by instincts that did not include self-preservation. When they reached the predetermined coordinates, Monroe triggered the trap. The corridor filled with chlorine gas, harmless to humans in their sealed armor, but lethal to the organic components of the biomechanical invaders. "All contacts down," Rodriguez reported, sealed the breach, moving to assist Deck 7. Throughout the human fleet, similar scenes played out as humanity's preparedness for hostile boarding. Actions proved devastatingly effective against an enemy that relied on overwhelming biological adaptation. Admiral Reeves appeared on screen again, this time with explosions visible through the viewport behind him. "Counselor Thys, we are going to need information about any civilians in the outer system. We are about to implement Scorched Earth protocols." "Scorched Earth? Total area denial. We are going to make this system uninhabitable for your enemies." Thys watched in awe and terror as the human fleet began deploying devices that turned entire regions of space into radiation storms. Ravager ships that entered these zones simply died, their biomechanical systems failing in environments that the humans had apparently designed their own vessels to survive. The weapons were terrifying in their simplicity. Nuclear mines that created sustained radiation fields, kinetic impactors that shattered asteroids into high-velocity debris clouds. Most horrifying of all, something the humans called stellar igniters, devices that caused local stars to flare, bathing entire regions of space in lethal radiation. How do they survive their own weapons? Quinn asked in amazement as human ships moved through radiation levels that would kill any known species. Their homeworld, Thys realized. It must be incredibly hostile. They built their technology to survive conditions that we consider uninhabitable. The battle raged for 6 days. When it ended, the Ravager horde was gone. Not retreated, but eliminated. 3,000 vessels reduced to expanding clouds of debris and organic matter. The human fleet had lost 11 ships. Chief Engineer Thompson worked frantically to repair battle damage on the UES Retribution. The Ravager bioweapons had been unlike anything in human experience. Living acid that tried to consume the ship's hull, energy-draining parasites that attempted to shut down power systems, and worst of all, some kind of conversion virus that tried to turn human technology into Ravager biotech. "Decontamination complete on decks 5 through 7, his assistant reported. "What about the conversion attempts?" "Failed completely. The virus appears to be designed for standard galactic technology. Our systems are too crude and robust for it to interface with." Thompson laughed grimly. For the first time, humanity's reputation for primitive, over-engineered technology had been an advantage rather than an embarrassment. Admiral Reeves appeared on screen one final time, his predator's face now bearing what Thys was beginning to recognize as genuine concern. "Counselor, are your people safe?" "Yes," she managed. "Yes, thanks to you. But how did you—" "Ma'am, we come from a world where everything tries to kill you, including the weather. Your enemies just made the mistake of picking a fight with a species that evolved to win wars." As the human fleet began rescue operations, with the same brutal efficiency they had shown in combat, Thys realized that the galaxy had just changed forever. They had summoned allies, but these allies might be more dangerous than the enemies they had faced. The question now was whether the cure would prove worse than the disease. But as she watched human rescue teams pulling Veltharian survivors from damaged stations with careful gentleness, she began to hope that perhaps these terrifying beings from the quarantine zones might actually be the salvation the galaxy needed. The humans had come to their rescue. Now the real question was what they wanted in return. In the aftermath of the battle, Admiral Reeves found himself in the strangest diplomatic meeting of his career. The Veltharian council chamber was a masterpiece of flowing architecture and soft lighting, everything designed to promote peace and contemplation. It made him feel like a barbarian at a poetry reading. High Counselor Thys sat across from him, her pale blue features still showing signs of shock. Around the circular table, other Veltharian officials watched him with expressions ranging from gratitude to barely concealed fear. "We cannot adequately express our appreciation," Thys began carefully. "Your intervention saved our entire species. But we must ask, what do you require in return?" Reeves had been dreading this question. In his experience, nothing in the galaxy came free, and he suspected the Veltharians expected him to demand tribute, territory, or subjugation. "Information," he said simply. "We need to understand what we are dealing with out here." Technical advisor Quinn leaned forward. "You eliminated an entire Ravager horde. Surely you must know—" "We know how to kill them," Reeves interrupted. "We do not know where they come from, how many more there are, or why they are doing this." The Veltharians exchanged glances that spoke of uncomfortable secrets. "Admiral," Thys said slowly, "how much do you know about galactic history? We have been spacefaring for 2 centuries. Most of our contacts have involved shooting first and asking questions later." Another exchange of looks. Cultural advisor Zeph, an elderly Veltharian with intricate tattoos covering his pale skin, spoke for the first time. "The Ravagers are not a natural species, Admiral. They are what remains of the Kethmori Empire, a civilization that attempted to conquer the galaxy approximately 800 standard years ago." Reeves felt a chill that had nothing to do with the chamber's temperature. Attempted? They succeeded for a time. 17 sectors fell before the coalition of peaceful worlds developed a biological weapon designed to target their specific genetic markers. "You committed genocide," Reeves said, his voice flat. The silence that followed was deafening. "We had no choice," Thys said defensively. "They were exterminating entire species, consuming worlds. The weapon was supposed to be humane, quick, painless. But something went wrong," Reeves guessed. Quinn's tentacles writhed in distress. The weapon mutated their biology instead of killing them. It turned them into the collective organisms you encountered, driven by hunger, incapable of complex thought, existing only to consume and reproduce. Reeves stood and walked to the chamber's vast window, looking out at the debris field where 3,000 tortured souls had died. Behind him, he could hear the Veltharians' discomfort. "You created monsters," he said quietly, "and then you quarantined the sectors where my species evolved, assuming we were too dangerous for contact. Admiral, you must understand, no." Reeves turned back to face them. "You do not get to explain away 8 centuries of genocide. But right now, that is not the important question. What is?" Thys asked. "How many more Ravager fleets are out there?" The Veltharians looked sick. Zeph pulled up a holographic display showing the galaxy's spiral arms. "Conservative estimates suggest 40 to 60 major hordes, each comparable to the force you destroyed. They have been expanding outward from the original Kethmori territories, consuming everything in their path." Reeves studied the display, noting how the infection patterns were spreading toward both Veltharian space and the quarantine zones where humanity had evolved. "They are heading for our colonies," he realized. "Yes. And Admiral, there is something else you need to know. The Coalition of Peaceful Worlds has been maintaining a defensive perimeter for 800 years. But it is failing. We estimate complete collapse within 50 standard years." Defense Minister Crix activated another display, showing Coalition fleet positions. "Our defensive strategy has always been containment. We built massive shield generators and orbital platforms to prevent Ravager expansion. But they are adapting." "Adapting how?" Reeves asked. "Learning to bypass our defenses, finding weak points. Most concerning, they appear to be developing new bioship designs specifically to counter our technology." "They are evolving," Quinn added grimly. "Each engagement teaches them more about our capabilities. Our defensive victories are becoming their education." Reeves was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of command decisions that would affect entire civilizations. "Counselor Thys, I need to contact my government. We are going to need a much larger fleet." "You are willing to help us fight the Ravagers?" Reeves looked at her with something that might have been sympathy. "Ma'am, You just told me that in 50 years a bunch of artificially created monsters are going to overrun the galaxy and consume my species. We are not helping you fight them. He paused, letting the words sink in. We are going to teach you how to win. Cultural Advisor Zeph looked troubled. Admiral, the Coalition species are not warriors. We have spent millennia developing peaceful societies. The concept of aggressive warfare is irrelevant, Reeves cut him off. Your peaceful societies are about to become extinct societies unless you learn to fight. He activated his personal communicator. Captain Monroe, please join us in the council chamber. Captain Lisa Monroe entered a few minutes later, her marine combat armor bearing scorch marks from the recent battle. The Veltharians instinctively moved away from her, reacting to the predatory confidence that all human warriors seem to radiate. Captain, Reeves said, brief the council on your assessment of Coalition military capabilities. Monroe looked around the room, taking in the elegant architecture and peaceful atmosphere. With respect to our hosts, their military doctrine is fundamentally flawed for the threat they are facing. Explain, Dice requested. You fight defensive battles against an enemy that reproduces faster than you can kill them. You use sophisticated weapons against an enemy that adapts to overcome sophisticated defenses. Most importantly, you fight as individuals against an enemy that functions as a collective. What would you recommend? Defense Minister Crix asked. Monroe's smile was cold and professional. Total war. Coordinated offensive strikes designed to eliminate breeding populations faster than they can reproduce. Scorched earth tactics to deny them resources. Most importantly, combined fleet operations using human shock tactics supported by Coalition logistics. The Veltharians looked horrified at the casual discussion of such brutal strategies. Captain Monroe, Dice said carefully, what you describe would require us to become something we have never been. Yes, Monroe agreed. You would become species that survive. Admiral Reeves stepped forward. Counselor, my species has one particular talent that seems to be rare in the galaxy. We are very good at killing things that try to kill us. The Ravagers made 2 mistakes when they attacked you. What mistakes? Quinn asked. First, they attacked a species under human protection. Second, they gave us a legitimate reason to do what we do best. These looked out at the debris field where the Ravager horde had died. Admiral, what do you need from us? Everything. Your manufacturing capacity, your ships, your crews, and your willingness to become something you have never been before. And in return, Admiral Reeves looked out at the stars, where human and Coalition fleets would soon begin joint operations against an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. In return, when this is over, you will still exist to debate whether it was worth it. The vote would be close, but humanity's newest allies would choose survival over philosophy. The galaxy would never be the same. 6 months after first contact, the Veltharian Military Academy had been transformed into something that would have been unrecognizable to its founders. The elegant halls now echoed with the sounds of tactical briefings, weapons training, and something the Veltharians were still struggling to understand: aggressive combat doctrine. General Patricia Hawkins stood before a mixed assembly of Coalition officers, her scarred hands moving across a holographic battlefield display. The aliens watching her came from 12 different species, all of them struggling to comprehend what they were seeing. The fundamental error in your defensive strategy, she explained, is that you are trying to fight a civilized war against an enemy that does not understand civilization. High Counselor Thys, now serving as the Coalition's military liaison, raised one of her elongated hands. General, our defensive positions have held for 800 years, and they are failing now, Hawkins replied bluntly. Your enemies are evolving. They are learning. Most importantly, they are not afraid of dying. She manipulated the display showing recent Ravager attack patterns. Look at these assault formations. They are sacrificing 30% of their forces just to test your defenses. That is not mindless hunger. That is tactical intelligence. Defense Coordinator Rix, a heavily armored species from the Coalition's core worlds, leaned forward. What do you propose? We stop defending and start hunting. The chamber erupted in dismayed voices. The concept of aggressive warfare was so alien to most Coalition species that they struggled even to discuss it. General, Cultural Advisor Zeph protested, we are peaceful civilizations. We cannot simply abandon 800 years of defensive doctrine. Hawkins smiled, and several aliens instinctively moved backward. Advisor, 6 months ago your people were about to be extinct. Now you are arguing philosophy. She changed the display to show human fleet movements. While you have been debating, we have eliminated 14 Ravager scout fleets and reduced 3 major hordes to scattered remnants. Not through superior technology, but through superior aggression. Colonel James Park, the human marine liaison, stepped forward. The Ravagers have one critical weakness that your defensive strategy never exploited. What weakness? Asked Technical Advisor Quinn. They are predictable. They always attack the strongest targets first, seeking maximum biomass consumption. This makes them vulnerable to tactical misdirection. Park activated a tactical display showing a recent engagement. 3 weeks ago, we used a coalition colony ship as bait. The Ravagers took it, thinking they had captured a civilian population center. You sacrifice civilians? Theiss asked, horrified. The ship was empty except for automated systems, Park explained. But it was filled with something the Ravagers had never encountered before. Earth bacteria specifically engineered to consume organic machinery. The display showed the aftermath. Ravager bioships dissolving from within as Earth microorganisms consume their living components. The human approach is, Technical Advisor Quinn searched for words, disturbingly effective. But it requires a mindset that our species may be constitutionally incapable of achieving. Then you will die, Hawkins said simply, because while you are maintaining your moral superiority, the Ravagers are breeding faster than you can kill them defensively. Admiral Reeves entered the chamber, his uniform bearing new insignia that marked him as Supreme Coalition Commander, a rank that had not existed until the humans made it necessary. Status. Report, he requested. The Coalition Council is still debating implementation of Doctrine 7, Hawkins replied. Reeves looked at the assembled aliens with the patience of someone who had spent months dealing with species that viewed warfare as an unfortunate necessity rather than a survival skill. Counselor Theiss, may I speak frankly? Of course, Admiral. Your people created this problem through warfare, biological warfare, but warfare nonetheless. Now you want to solve it through peaceful resistance. The mathematics do not work. He activated a new display showing galactic infection patterns. At current rates of expansion, the Ravagers will reach Earth in 37 years. They will reach the Coalition core worlds in 23. Defensive strategies might buy you 5 additional years. And your offensive strategies? Theiss asked. Complete extermination of the Ravager threat within 15 years, assuming full Coalition cooperation. The chamber fell silent. Finally, Zeph spoke. Admiral, what you are proposing would fundamentally change who we are as civilizations. Yes, Reeves agreed. You will become civilizations that survive. He turned to address the entire assembly. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings, my species evolved on a world that tried to kill us daily. We learned to be more dangerous than our environment, more aggressive than our predators, and more adaptable than our climate. Captain Elena Rodriguez, commander of the Human Special Forces Division, stepped forward with a data pad. The Coalition has impressive manufacturing capabilities and scientific knowledge. What you lack is what humans call killer instinct. She activated a display showing comparative casualty rates. In defensive engagements, Coalition forces lose an average of 43% of their ships per battle. Human forces lose an average of 7%. The difference is not technology, Colonel Park added. The difference is that we assume every enemy contact is life or death, while Coalition forces assume every engagement should be minimally destructive. Defense Coordinator Rix looked uncomfortable. Are you suggesting we abandon all rules of civilized warfare? I am suggesting you win, Rodriguez replied. The Ravagers do not follow rules. They do not respect surrender. They do not take prisoners. Fighting them with civilized tactics is like trying to stop a plague with poetry. Admiral Reeves walked to the chamber's main display, showing the current galactic situation. The galaxy does not care about your moral philosophy. It does not respect your peaceful intentions. It will kill you if you let it. He highlighted sectors that had fallen to the Ravagers in the past year. Each of these worlds contained billions of sentient beings. They died because their defenders were too civilized to fight effectively. General Hawkins brought up tactical projections. Human doctrine calls for what we term overwhelming response. When Ravagers attack a target, we do not send reinforcements to defend it. We send strike forces to destroy 3 of their breeding worlds. That seems excessive, Quinn observed. It is effective, Hawkins replied. The Ravagers are learning that attacking human-protected worlds costs them more than they gain. Basic predator psychology. Counselor Thys stood slowly. What do you need from us? Everything, Reeves answered. Your manufacturing capacity, your ships, your crews, and your willingness to become something you have never been before. And if we refuse? Captain Rodriguez answered with brutal honesty. Then in 50 years the galaxy will be inhabited entirely by Ravagers and humans. We will survive because we are too dangerous to exterminate easily. Everyone else will become food. The vote was held 3 days later. Representatives from 47 coalition worlds cast their decisions in secret ballot. The final tally was 26 in favor of the Human Alliance, 21 opposed. As Admiral Reeves accepted the coalition's formal request for military partnership, he reflected on the irony. For centuries, the civilized galaxy had quarantined humanity because they were too violent, too aggressive, too dangerous for contact. Now those same qualities were the galaxy's only hope for survival. Colonel Park began immediate deployment of human training officers to coalition worlds. Captain Rodriguez started planning joint operations that would combine human shock tactics with coalition logistics. General Hawkins prepared for the largest military campaign in galactic history. The peaceful species of the coalition were about to learn what humanity had known since its earliest days. Sometimes, the only way to preserve peace is to become very, very good at war. In shipyards across human space, construction began on vessels designed not for exploration or defense, but for the systematic extermination of an entire species. The galaxy's newest alliance was preparing for total war. The Ravagers had spent 8 centuries consuming peaceful civilizations. Now they were about to discover what happened when they encountered a species that had evolved to be the most dangerous predator in the galaxy. The humans were coming, and they were bringing friends. The galaxy would never be the same.